not only did I not get any help from my doctors, but they were actually guiding me into a direction that was going to harm me. There are so many poor people out there who are going to their doctors, trusting their doctors, and after coming back are being sent on a never-ending carousel to death, and in the process are actually accumulating tons and tons of medical debt along the way. What the hell is going on with the medical industry today? Hey guys, it's Andrea here. In today's video, I would like to talk about my frustrations with the healthcare industry from the perspective of a patient and not a practitioner. Today being the year 2025 when I'm making this video, in case anybody finds this video later. Before I get into it, I first want to share a short story about a medical situation that I had gone through recently, but I want to keep it as short as possible because I want to get more into the details of where I think the medical industry is going wrong today. So I'm 37 years old, and I've noticed over the past 2 years that I've developed some pretty serious and intense digestive issues, which is something that I had never struggled with in my younger years. In my 20s and even my early 30s, I could literally eat multiple servings of ice cream in one sitting. I could eat a lot of dairy, a lot of sweets, a lot of sugars, pretty much any macronutrient for the majority of my life. I didn't have any problems digesting. Before I get into the details of the story, I should also mention that I've been a pretty health conscious person ever since my young 20s as well. So I typically opted for whole foods or the best version of a food I can find. So for example, if I was going to get ice cream, I would typically opt for something that was simply the cream and the eggs and the sugar without all the extra additives and the soybean oils and fructose corn syrup, etc. So I was always pretty health conscious in that respect. But like I said, I was able to eat whatever I wanted, as much as I wanted, a lot of calories in one day. I was working out, so I would burn the calories and convert it into muscle really easily. I noticed over the past 2 years that suddenly I was not able to do this, and my digestion had gotten worse and worse to the point where the only macronutrient that I was able to digest was essentially carbohydrates. I had serious digestive issues in regards to fats and proteins. So pretty much for the past 2 years, I was only able to digest carbohydrates. And by the way, not any carbohydrate I wanted either. I was very limited. White rice I was able to handle, pretty much any fruit I could handle, and that's kind of about it. Even vegetables were limited to a degree. I was only really able to handle very watery vegetables like tomatoes, cucumbers, green zucchini, and that type of thing, but I couldn't handle any cruciferous vegetables, so no broccoli, no cauliflower, that sort of thing. So when I really think about it, if I were to try to put the diet that I had been on the past 2 years in some kind of box, I essentially had become a low FODMAP vegan because there was very little proteins I could tolerate except shrimp. For some reason, I was able to tolerate shrimp, but I couldn't handle the high protein content of chicken. I couldn't handle beef because it was too fatty. I couldn't handle eggs, couldn't handle dairy. So I was very limited in what I could eat. Pretty much a regular meal for me would be white rice, green zucchini, and shrimp. And that's kind of what I had every day for the past 2 years, essentially. For obvious reasons, I was really concerned about this. I was concerned about how this could be affecting my nutrient absorption and that sort of thing. So I went to the doctors, just like any person would do. Before I get into the details of my experience with the doctors in regards to these digestive issues, I should first mention that the health insurance that I'm on is a low-income health insurance. It would be considered Medicaid today, so because of that, I don't have access to the best doctors. But we'll get to that part later. So now on to the actual details of my experience with these doctors. So when I first went to my doctors with these digestive issues, the very first thing that they went to and diagnosed me with was acid reflux. And by the way, for those of you who don't know what acid reflux is, I'm pretty sure most people understand what it is, but just in case, in short, the idea behind acid reflux is that the acid contents of your stomach are traveling up into your esophagus because of a weakened lower esophageal sphincter muscle, which is intended to hold the acid contents down. And what doctors will do in this situation is they will give their patients omeprazole, which is a pill that is designed to lower the acidity in your stomach. And the theory is that if there's less acidity in your stomach, then there is no way for the acid to come up through that weakened sphincter muscle. Now, there are all kinds of problems with this method of treatment, which I'm going to get into later. First, I'm going to finish the story of my experience with my doctors. So after about a month and a half of me being on omeprazole, I had zero improvement in my digestive issues. And as a matter of fact, my digestive issues actually got even worse. And side note, why they even thought that acid reflux had anything to do with digestive issues, I think has to do with the fact that one of my main symptoms was issues digesting fats. And I know that fats tend to produce more stomach acid because you need acid in your stomach in order to digest the fats. But again, we're going to get a little more into why that is problematic later. So after having gone to a generic doctor for treatment and the treatment did not work, my next line of defense was to go to the GI doctor, the gastrointestinal doctor, which definitely seemed like the best sensible move to go to next. When I went to the GI doctor and I told them all my symptoms, they recommended that I get a full panel of testing done, including blood test, an ultrasound on my organs like my gallbladder, etc., and a colonoscopy, which is actually a pretty intense procedure. You go through anesthesia to get it done, and there's a whole process behind that as well, if anybody has been through that. Once all these tests were completed and they got all the results back, they reported to me that they couldn't find anything wrong with me. There was nothing wrong in my GI tract that they were able to detect with the colonoscopy. There was nothing visibly wrong with my gallbladder and my liver, etc. And there was nothing wrong with any of my blood work. So at the end of this, they basically just told me, you have IBS, take Metamucil. And that was it. And then they sent me on my way. They didn't offer me any nutritional advice. They didn't recommend that I get any blood work to see if I was nutrient deficient in vitamin D or anything like that. The original blood work they had me do was not the type of blood work that was going to detect any vitamin deficiencies directly, possibly indirectly by some clues. But the original blood work was related to the liver. It's called a liver panel. So basically, in a nutshell, after leaving the doctors, I was told that I was on my own with this and there was nothing they could do. They didn't know what was wrong, even though there was nothing that my body could digest anymore except for white rice, a few vegetables, and shrimp. And the symptoms that would occur when I would try to eat the other things were not mild. They were pretty severe symptoms. If anybody's grossed out by these details, fast forward a little bit if you don't want to hear. But if anybody is going through anything like this themselves and they want to hear if it relates to their story, anytime I would try to eat any of those other foods, I would get gas, nausea, diarrhea. My stools were very strangely colored. Rather than being dark, they were extremely light to almost pale yellow or white in color. And all of these symptoms I had shared with the GI doctor. And like I said, they told me nothing was wrong with me. I just have IBS. And they couldn't detect anything further than that based on my symptoms. Because of this, I started getting pretty scared and I was really worried. What could this mean for my future if I couldn't digest all these macronutrients anymore? What could this lead to? So I decided to take my medical research in my own hands and I started to learn about the human body. I started researching the organs. I started researching how the gallbladder works and how bile flow works and how insulin resistance works. I was basically becoming my own fucking doctor because my doctors wouldn't do anything for me. So I started educating myself. And I did this by using ChatGPT, was of course a very useful tool, but also I was listening to different medical lectures on YouTube. There are actual qualified doctors on YouTube who specialize in all kinds of things. So between ChatGPT directing me to research papers for me to read on my own and listening to medical professionals on YouTube, I was essentially able to fix all of my digestive problems by myself. I plugged all of my symptoms into vivid detail into ChatGPT. And after going back and forth with ChatGPT, and it was asking me more questions about my symptoms, and I was giving it very vivid descriptions of what was going on with me, it eventually pointed me in the direction of that I was having fat malabsorption due to low acid content in my stomach. This was a very key piece of information because I was then able to take that information and do my own research by typing things into Google and looking up different YouTube doctors, etc. And I found a lot of different doctors on YouTube talking about how doctors very commonly diagnose their patients with acid reflux and how damaging this actually could be, because in turn they end up putting their patients on omeprazole, which lowers their acid content, when actually the issues in their digestion have to do with the opposite thing, that they have low acid content. And it is often seen that the reason why some people have acid reflux is because they're not making enough acid in their mouth and in their stomach to digest meats and fats properly. And because of that, those meats and fats are sitting in their stomach being undigested, and because there's an excess amount of protein and fats stuck in their stomach undigested, then the stomach can't handle the overload and all the acids come up. But it's a complex problem because, like I said, that is a result of not having enough acids to break down those fats and proteins. And what some of these doctors recommended was, before eating your fats and proteins, to stimulate acid production in your mouth using several different possible methods. For one, there are some supplements people could take in order to stimulate acid production in their mouth. And that supplement is called betaine HCl. Or if you're on a budget and you can't afford extra supplements, there's also other things you could do to stimulate acid production in your mouth to help break down proteins and fats. And you can do that by either drinking some apple cider vinegar or drinking some lemon water right before you're about to eat. Another thing that they highly recommend is simply just calming down and sitting with your food before you eat, to cook your own food, because apparently your brain actually starts making some of those digestive enzymes as you're cooking your food because you're smelling it and you're anticipating eating it. You ever notice when you're cooking, you kind of get that watering and salivating of the mouth feeling, almost like you would see in cartoons, animals that are salivating as they're about to get a really good meal. You start to feel that a little bit when you're about to consume something you cooked. So a big advice I got was just slowing down before I eat and really chewing my food. So I followed that advice. I am on a budget, so I didn't go with the supplement route. I decided to go natural, and I basically just slowed down. And before consuming my meals, I would put a shot of apple cider vinegar in hot water, dilute it in that, and slowly drink it before I ate and also while I was eating. I did this for a few days, and literally 2 years of digestive hell was gone within a few days. And I've been doing this method for about 2 weeks now, and I haven't had any digestive issues ever since. All the nausea is gone. I haven't been bloated a single time in the past few weeks. I haven't been gassy. I mean, obviously there's been like 1 or 2 farts here and there that are normal, but I'm not talking about that kind of gas. I'm talking about the distended stomach pain gas. I haven't had a single episode. I haven't had any diarrhea. I've had normal, healthy, colored stools. And I'm talking 2 years of intense pain in my stomach, all resolved within a few days, not by anything that a doctor told me. Well, that an in-person doctor told me, because the YouTube doctors gave me the information, but you get what I'm saying here. Not a single doctor that I paid money for through my health insurance, which, by the way, the copays were very expensive. They were about $80 a copay for each session to see a specialist. So if I want to see a GI specialist, it costs money. Getting a colonoscopy is not just paid for by my health insurance. It costs thousands of dollars to get something like that. So thousands of dollars, years of visits, expensive copays for somebody who makes a low income. I'm a piano teacher and a musician, and my YouTube channel only has like 1,500 subscribers right now. So obviously not making a lot of money doing this either. All for nothing. And not only did I not get any help from my doctors, but they were actually guiding me into a direction that was going to harm me. They were prescribing me pills that was going to lower the acid contents in my stomach, when the problem was that I needed more acid in my mouth and in my stomach in order to digest meats and fats. So not only were my doctors not helping me, but they were actually killing me. They were completely useless. And now that I think about it, how irresponsible it was for the GI doctor to just say, well, you have IBS, take Metamucil, which, by the way, Metamucil has all kinds of additives in it that are not good for people with IBS. She could have just recommended straight psyllium husk, which could also be problematic for people, but that's besides the fact. The fact that I was not digesting properly 2 macronutrients that my body needs could have been incredibly dangerous for me if I didn't figure out the solution to the problem. And I figured out the solution to the problem by myself using the modern technologies of ChatGPT and YouTube. I'm honestly upset. I'm pissed off. I find it astonishing how bad the doctors are today for people in a low income situation. That's not to say there aren't good doctors in the health industry today out there if you can afford them. I do know people who are in a financial position where they could do their research, find these doctors that they find on YouTube, and get in a plane and fly across the country to wherever they are and get help from these great doctors directly. So there are great doctors out there, but the problem is they're not covered for people who have low income health insurance. And by the way, I'm incredibly lucky that, for one, genetically, I'm an obsessively persistent person. So if there's a problem, I'm getting to the root of it. So my psychotic brain was able to heal myself essentially and get to the root of the problem. And secondly, I'm lucky that I actually have a job that allowed me the free time to do this research on the side in order to find the root of my medical issues. I'm a piano teacher and a musician, so I don't have a regular 9-to-5 job. I don't have piano students here all day long. I typically only have piano students in the later evening hours, because even if they're adults, they usually come after work, or if they're children, they come after school. So I have the mornings free to myself. If I was a 9-to-5 job person, which a lot of people on low income health insurance are, I would have not had the time or the energy to do all this studying and research on the human body to get to the root of the issue. So there are so many poor people out there who are going to their doctors, trusting their doctors, and after coming back from their doctors are being sent on a never-ending carousel to death, and in the process are actually accumulating tons and tons of medical debt along the way. What the hell is going on with the medical industry today? And this begs the question, why are we getting such bad information from our doctors? Why are there such careless doctors out there today? I have a lot of questions about this that I've gone through my head before. Are they stupid? Are the doctors we have today actually stupid people? I would imagine that to be a doctor, you would have to at least have resilience, right? You would at least have resilience to be able to stay up and study all the rigorous hours to become a doctor. I would imagine you would have to have some sort of intelligence to study very difficult fields like science and chemistry, etc. I would imagine you would have to be pretty smart to do that. So why are our doctors so seemingly dumb? Or are they not that dumb? Are they just overworked? And they don't have the time and energy to care about their patients in such detail? Is there something conspiratorial going on here? Are these doctors who make a lot of money trained to keep us sick so we could keep coming back? Because, for example, in my situation, there was nothing wrong on my tests. that they could visibly see. So my guess would be they would have to prioritize their limited time because they have a lot of patients coming in. But I would imagine if they don't see anything physically wrong on my colonoscopy or anything like that, that they would kind of have to ignore my symptoms and then move on to somebody who has something more immediately demanding, like cancer, etc., anything like that. But I think what they're missing here is that people like me who are having serious debilitating symptoms but don't have anything on the test yet would not progress to anything on the test if those symptoms had been taken seriously to begin with. A lot of these people end up getting serious conditions and cancer because of chronic inflammation. These things don't just come up from nothing. They start from inflammation. Everything starts from inflammation and eventually leads to something more severe. So why aren't they taking those beginning symptoms seriously? They're waiting to work on things before it's too late. Another serious issue I have with the medical industry today is that their approach only seems to be very useful in the context of, let's say, an injury. If somebody breaks a leg and they go to the hospital kills it. They do a great job at taking care of something like that. But in terms of more complex diseases, immune diseases, basically anything that involves complex systems working together as one, they are terrible at taking care of. Their method typically only involves taking care of a symptom they see and not looking at the big picture. For example, diagnosing people with acid reflux with medication that gives them low acid contents in their stomach. That is a Band-Aid solution because when you're looking at the bigger picture, yes, it might help with any throat pain that they're getting from acid coming up through their esophagus. But in the long run, they're actually making it so that they don't have enough acid in their stomach to digest foods they need, which is going to lead to nutrition deficiency, which is going to eventually lead to disease and death. And I don't understand why our modern health industry works this way. You would think by now, with all of emerging technology, with AI and ChatGPT, you think they would be evolving with that and they would understand that the holistic approach is typically the correct approach in terms of the body. And again, it goes back to the question, are the doctors just overworked? Do they not have the time or the mental energy to think of things in a complex way? Do they have to just treat what they see immediately because they have a huge line of patients waiting for them? The whole thing is just a mess. I'm really upset. And honestly, after this whole experience, I almost felt inspired to go back to get a nutrition certification from a school so I can help some people with the same issue that I faced. You know what I mean? I mean, I guess I could be helping people just by sharing my story, but I feel like I wish there was something I could do to take things an extra step to be able to help sick people that are being misled by their doctors. So until I feel more qualified to be in a position to do that, all I can say for now is if you're not getting any help from your doctors, take your health seriously and do some of your own research. Keep looking for answers. It's really frustrating. It's really aggravating. I didn't find answers overnight. Actually, now that I think about it, my first line of defense several years ago was going on a low FODMAP diet, which is also something I found by myself, by the way. My doctors never even told me about the low FODMAP diet or recommended it at all in any of my sessions going to the doctor. But basically, the low FODMAP diet was a way for me to figure out what foods were aggravating me. Because in the beginning, I didn't know what foods were aggravating me because I was eating everything. So that was a very eliminating diet. But that was a Band-Aid solution in itself because it shows you what you can't eat, but it doesn't necessarily help you eat everything again. It just shows you where the problem is. But all that to say, it took me going through the low FODMAP diet and trying different things out to eventually get to the point to get the colonoscopy, to eventually get to a point where I got so fed up that I just read a lot about the human body till I got to the information I found. And like I said, when it comes to your health, please advocate for yourself. Do your research. Try to find any resources you can online because, as much as I hear people talk in a doomsday fashion about technology, I gotta say, if it wasn't for technology, I may have never been able to help myself because I would have had to rely solely on the doctors that I was paying for. And I probably would have gotten so fed up that I would have just given up, and that could have led to disease if I had gone that route. So thank God for technology, or else I wouldn't have been able to help myself. But anyways, that's all I have to share for you guys today. Please drop in the comment section below if anybody else could relate to this video. If anybody listening also has their grievances with the medical industry, or they have a situation where they couldn't get help for something and there was ongoing physical stress in their life that they resolved on their own, or if you disagree with anything I said, please drop that in the comment section below as well. I like this YouTube channel to be interactive. I like to read what my listeners have to say. So please, I appreciate any feedback and any conversation that I can get on here. And that's it. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Hey guys, I just wanted to let my listeners know that I offer virtual piano lessons. I work with students of all different ages, from children to adult, and all different levels from beginning, intermediate to advanced. If you're interested in booking a trial lesson with me, you can reach me on Instagram DM, Pranzata, or you can reach me via email, pranzata@gmail.com, Pranzata@gmail.com.